All right, good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war summary. And today we're seeing a continuation of the Russian Purge. It is still in full swing, and we're seeing Russian generals and commanders getting taken out left and right of their positions for various reasons, most likely tied to the fact that there is an issue in the Russian MOD with insubordination right now. So, with that being said, let's jump right into our first piece of news, which is from Null Reports. It says the commander of the 106th Airborne Division within the Vostok Combined Troops Grouping, Vladimir Severstov, was sacked himself by Shoigu, and this is the notorious Shoigu at this point, the one who's become the scapegoat for the Russian military, personally sacked this guy for some unknown reason. We don't really know why just yet. And it says here that this commander's units were fighting in the Bakhmut direction, and units under his command were involved in war crimes against civilians in the Kyiv Oblast. And right off the bat, I can tell you that this guy was most likely not sacked for the war crimes that he's alleged against the civilians, because Russia perpetrates war crimes every single day, and they're not going to make an exception with this guy because the Russians are the ones ordering the war crimes to be committed. So that's probably not the reason why he was sacked. Most likely, it was either he was ineffective at fighting in Bakhmut, and they're going to make this guy a scapegoat himself, or it was an issue with insubordination, and this guy was on Putin's list to basically eliminate, so that way he can't rise up and try to basically pull a coup internally, or do something to usurp Putin's power, because obviously right now Putin's very paranoid after the coup occurred, and he's looking for people that might be the next target. So this guy right here must have been it, and now he has been removed from his post, and he's probably being interrogated, and he's probably in FSB custody, but we really don't know yet. So we'll have to watch this one to see more details coming out about it to figure out exactly why this guy was sacked. So with that being said, let's move on to our next piece of news here, which is from the Kyiv Post. We heard yesterday that the Ukrainian General Zaluzhny is getting very fed up with the fact that he cannot strike Russia on its mainland, mainly because of the West asking them not to do so. And obviously Ukraine doesn't want to piss the West off, so they're taking a reserved approach in regards to striking Russia, their mainland. So we see here that Zaluzhny said that as soon as Ukraine has the resources, he would like to liberate Russian-occupied Crimea. And that's been a stated goal by Ukraine for a long time. We've known that they want to retake Crimea. Ever since Russia started this entire brutal war, they've wanted to go down and retake all of their territory, including Crimea. So we can't blame them for that, and we've known that for some time. But the interesting part is this quote he makes in the second section. He says, "As soon as I have the means, I'll do something. I don't give a damn, and nobody will stop me." And he said this in an interview with the Washington Post. So I would assume that he was directing the statement at the West. And that's quite interesting here because Zaluzhny, like I said, is getting very fed up with not being able to strike the Russian mainland. And now he's getting very fed up with the fact that apparently somebody in the background is telling him to be very careful before attacking Crimea in full force. So this indicates something is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, and there's apparently some tensions brewing. So, it's up to interpretation, but I think this statement was directed at Washington by Zaluzhny. So, very interesting, and we'll have to keep an eye on it like with all of our stories. So, with that being said, we're moving on to our next piece of news, which is from Null Reports once again. And it said, reported as a Wagner PMC column, including construction equipment, is on their way to Belarus. And we do know for a fact that the Wagner are heading to Belarus, and some are already there, and we'll get to that shortly. But now we see some more pictures coming out of some heavy equipment being brought to Belarus, apparently, I would assume, for the Wagner to keep building their camps that they're allegedly setting up there. So we've already seen this photo here to the left of the trucks heading down the highway in Russia, and they're all making their way somewhere, and we presume that all of these soldiers are heading to Belarus. But we'll have to wait for visual confirmation to know that for a fact. But like I said, there are already some Wagner PMC in Belarus already. So let's move on to our next piece of news, which is from Phytux. It says Russia is investigating whether a North Korean intercontinental ballistic missile crashed in its waters during a test launch this week. And this is from the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, reported by TASS, which is Russian media. So this would be an ironic change of events because right now North Korea is very upset with the West because they keep alleging that we're flying U-2 spy planes with their territory, and they've been threatening to shoot them down, and the West has gotten a little rattled by that because we stopped flying planes over their territory for now. So it appears in one of these show of force events of North Korea launching one of their missiles, it looks like it might have landed in Russian waters, And that's not good for North Korea and Russian relations, because right now, North Korea has very few allies. They are known as the Hermit Kingdom, and Russia is one of those very few allies that they have, and they can't afford to risk pissing them off. So I'd imagine any tensions that arise from this will probably be smoothed out pretty quickly by North Korean command to avoid losing an ally. So very interesting here, and this could brew up into something, perhaps bigger, but we'll have to see. And moving on to our next piece of news, we have another post from Phytux, and says during the first 2 weeks of Ukraine's counteroffensive, as much as 20% of the weaponry it sent to the battlefield was damaged or destroyed, according to U.S. and European officials. And we also see here that it says that after suffering heavy losses, Ukrainians paused to rethink strategy. And of course, that's a good thing. If Ukraine goes full force in like they did at the beginning of their counteroffensive because they were hyped and ready to go, and they saw that the strategy of going full force like a bull wasn't working, now they've had to adapt. They've taken a more reserve strategy, and they're more strategically attacking these really highly entrenched Russian defensive positions. And that's understandable because right now Russia has thrown everything they have into defending their trench lines to basically prevent Ukraine from pushing back through and pushing them back out of Ukraine. So right now the Russians are much more focused on defense than offense, and Ukraine needs to basically adapt their strategy to match that situation. So with that being said, let's move on to our next piece of news, and it's from us actually. It's it's the Enforcer. While I stumbled right over that, it says breaking: fighters from the Russian mercenary group Wagner have arrived in Belarus from Russia, said a Ukrainian official. And like I said earlier, there are already Wagner in Belarus, and we know for a fact that they're there because we've seen them training Belarusian troops. And of course, y'all know the situation with that. Belarus is looking for some help to train their military, and they're looking for help from convicts and Wagner. So, take that for what you will. But we know now that Prigozhin is also there himself. We saw a picture of him in his underwear in a camp, in a tent. And I don't know why that was published either, but, we had the picture nonetheless. It's a gruesome sight. And we can see that Wagner is already there. So that is that piece of news. So let's move on to our last piece, which is also another post from us at It's the Enforcer. It says, breaking: in a new Russian propaganda spin, Putin claims that the Wagner PMC does not exist. And Putin said when asked if Wagner would be kept on as a fighting unit that, quote unquote, we do not have a law for private military organizations. It simply does not exist. And this is obviously Putin's new propaganda strategy to basically dupe his domestic audience. This isn't going to fool anybody in the West. We already know what's going on with this. Wagner does exist. It's simply exiled to Belarus, at least for now. We also know that the Wagner PMC commanders are still very upset and very agitated by the fact that not only Prigozhin kind of let them down, but also Putin himself, still is running his mouth talking about them, and they're going to still try to brew up something or maybe rise up in the background. So we'll have to wait and see. But to say this right here, that we do not have a law for private military organizations, is crazy because Putin himself has said that they funded Wagner themselves. So apparently Putin's admitting he broke the law, but we know that Putin's above the law. It doesn't apply to him. So that's what the situation is with that. And of course, it's more Russian propaganda and more lies. So that is actually our last piece of news. It was kind of a slow news day today, so not too much coming out. But I'm sure that we'll see a lot more come out here in the next 24 hours because, of course, the Russian purge continues. But in the meantime, if you would, press the like and subscribe on this video, and go check us out on Twitter as well, at It's the Enforcer, and give us a follow over there. If you want the news as fast as possible, that is the quickest way to get it on our Twitter page, so peep the Twitter. And also, if you want to support our work, you can go to our Patreon page and support us over there, and that helps us to keep doing this work and reporting the news. So, once again, thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you at 10 p.m. Eastern on our stream, and we'll see you then. So, bye-bye for now.